Bonjour. In this video, we shall discuss affirmative phrases in French. Affirmative phrases or sentences are sentences which make a declaration, an affirmative declaration. For example, in English, the book is on the table. He is going to school. I like that book. These phrases are called affirmative phrases because they affirm something. Sentences can be separated into a subject, a sujet, which may be stated or implied, and a predicate, a prédicat. The subject is the person or persons or things performing the action. The predicate is the action of the sentence, which usually begins with the verb. Each sentence has an end punctuation mark, such as a period, a question mark, or exclamation point, depending on the type of sentence, as well as possible intermediary punctuation such as commas. An interrogative statement will end with a question mark, an exclamatory phrase with an exclamation mark, and an affirmative phrase with a period or a full stop. Here's an example. Je suis professeur. I am a teacher. Here, the subject is je, the first person singular pronoun. The predicate suis professeur. Suis is the conjugated form of the verb être, to be. Suis is conjugated for the first person singular subject je. Professeur is the object of the sentence. I am a professor. I am a teacher. Paul et moi aimons la France. Paul and I love France. Subject, Paul et moi. Paul and I. Predicate, aimons la France. Love France. We shall now take a look at the different types of sentences. There are 4 types of sentences. Statements or affirmative statements, affirmative phrases, questions, interrogative phrases, interrogative sentences, exclamations, and commands or imperatives. In this video, we are concerned only with the affirmative phrases, statements, or phrases assertives, or phrases déclaratives. Statements, the most common type of sentence, state or declare something. There are affirmative statements, les phrases déclaratives or affirmatives, and negative statements, les phrases déclaratives négatives. Statements end in periods. Statements or declarative sentences are the easiest way to approach French sentence construction. French, like English, follows the subject-verb-complement structure. Je mange une pomme. Je mange une pomme. I eat an apple. In this sentence, je is the subject and describes the person performing the action. Mange is the verb and it describes the action. Une pomme is the complement. It answers questions like what, why, where, or how. There can be several complements in a sentence. They are usually placed back to back at the end of the sentence, but can also be separated as long as they are isolated by commas. Je mange une pomme à la maison. I eat an apple at home. À la maison, je mange une pomme. At home, I eat an apple. Negative statements. English only uses one negative word, not. French uses two, non, pas. Ne is placed after the subject or sometimes just before the verb. Before vowels A, E, I, O, U or H, no becomes N apostrophe. Pas is placed after the verb. Je ne mange pas de pomme. I don't eat apples. In this sentence, the pomme, the is a partitive article. Because we are talking about pomme, apples, but not all the apples. We are talking about some apples. So in a negative sentence, all indefinite or partitive articles become the. So I don't eat apples. If we had been talking about some specific apples, then we would have used the definite article. Je ne mange pas les pommes. I don't eat the apples, some specific apples. But when we're talking about apples in general, then we use the pomme. The thing to remember is that indefinite and partitive articles become the in a negative sentence. The same pattern also works with other negative statements. Ne, que, only, ne jamais, never, ne quelque, few. Je ne mange jamais de pomme. I never eat apples. So the normal word order in French is subject, verb and object or complement. If a clause has both a direct object and an indirect object, the direct object usually comes before the indirect object. For example, in the sentence, Sandrine a montré le chemin à ses amis. Sandrine is the subject, a montré is the verb, the direct object is le chemin. The indirect object are ses amis. The translation is Sandrine showed the way to her friends. A direct object usually answers the question what. Sandrine a montré. Sandrine has showed what, le chemin. So that is the direct object. And an indirect object is usually preceded by a preposition. In this case, a. The object of a sentence is the recipient of the action expressed by the verb. A direct object, in French complément d'objet direct, is an object that receives the action of the verb directly. It is never preceded by a preposition, and it responds to the questions who or what. An indirect object, complément d'objet indirect, is separated from the verb by the prepositions a or the. You can identify an indirect object via the questions to whom, with whom, to what, etc. To avoid repetition, we can replace objects with object pronouns. In that case, the object pronoun will come before the verb. A thing to note is that sentence structure can change in some circumstances. If a sentence begins with aussi, à peine, peut-être, sans doute, the verb will come before the subject. Example, sans doute ne pleuvra-t-il pas demain. No doubt it will not rain tomorrow. Now let's take a look at the application of some simple affirmative sentences. Les phrases déclaratives affirmatives. Je vais à la banque. Je suis fatigué. Je vous aiderai. In this case, vous is an object pronoun, and therefore it comes before the verb. J'espère que tu seras là. Je t'aime. Je vais à la banque. Je suis fatigué. Je vous aiderai. J'espère que tu seras là. Je t'aime. Je deviendrai un grand pilote. This sentence is in the future tense. Les amis se sont mariés. This sentence is in the past tense. So, to summarize, a sentence is affirmative when it says something. All types of sentences can take the affirmative form, la forme affirmative. Usually it is linked to the declarative phrase because it ends with a point, a full stop, a period, and it asserts something. The affirmative form shows that you have agreed to something. That brings us to the end of this video. Merci, au revoir.